Will any wide receivers fall out of this category? Who has the best chance to jump into wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 tiers? And where is everyone being drafted? What is going on, guys? It's Wade here with Tongues Cat Gaming and Sports, and we are back with our Crunch Time Sports podcast. So today is obviously Friday, and our episodes now will be coming out on Friday and Monday for the next few episodes. And today we will actually be doing wide receivers 3 and wide receivers 2. So we'll be looking at 24 wide receivers and where I have them all ranked. Monday will be the top 12 wide receivers, and then we'll go ahead and look at the top 12 tight ends. So not much going on right now, and we have a bunch of players we're going to go into. So we're going to head and already jump into the episode, and we will begin with number 36, and that is going to be Emmanuel Sanders, as he is a wide receiver now for the New Orleans Saints. Emmanuel has been in the league since 2010. He signed a 2-year, $16 million contract, and he showed no setbacks from the Achilles injury he suffered in 2018 while he was with the Denver Broncos. Sanders has been a steady wide receiver since being a third-round pick out of SMU in 2010. His best years were in Denver, where he had 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons from 2014 to 2016. He had a devastating Achilles injury in 2018, but he didn't look hampered at all as he played in all 17 weeks. Now you heard me right, all 17 weeks, because he actually got traded from the Broncos to the 49ers, who had already had their bye. So he actually played in every game, and then he played in the 49ers' 3 playoff games, obviously, as they went to the Super Bowl. So he played in a ton of football games, was explosive, looks great. He was traded midseason, though, to the 49ers, like I said, and together put up 66 receptions for 869 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I could easily see him replicating that with Drew Brees at the helm. He might even put up a couple more touchdowns too, maybe 7, maybe even 8. And anytime you can take a chance on a New Orleans player, you probably should. And Sanders' ADP allows you just that. He is currently going at 904. Yeah, so he's a 9th round pick. So he's practically free. That's free value pretty much right there. And you would be wise for drafting him to play on your bench more than likely. So this is ridiculous value. And you might even want to take him around earlier just because he's more than likely going to have productive games with Drew Brees. You can never write him off. So this is definitely a guy you should definitely look to scoop up with one of your late round selections. Moving on to number 35, that is going to be Brandin Cooks, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. He came over from the Rams via trade. This is his 4th team since entering the league in 2014, and he won't be a free agent until the 2024 season. So, at least we do, Texan-wise, have Brandin Cooks locked in for quite a few years. So Cooks came into the league as a first-round pick by the Saints in 2014. He then got shipped to New England for a year and then the LA Rams, and now finds himself on the Texans. Last year, he struggled mightily with injuries and then production when on the field. Last year, he only had 42 receptions for 583 yards and 2 touchdowns, which did end a run of 4 consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards. Now with Hopkins gone, clearing up 150 targets, Cooks and Will Fuller and Randall Cobb and maybe even David Johnson a little bit will look to absorb all the leftovers. Cooks should be able to take over and become the wide receiver 1 the Texans need. The only question is, can he stay healthy? Cooks has struggled with concussions, which is the worst thing a player can deal with because every hit, there's a huge risk that he goes down. He's being taken at 704 right now, and that is definitely a good spot to take a chance on him in the middle rounds, especially having Deshaun Watson at quarterback. You can get Brandin Cooks as a flex guy, or maybe even your wide receiver 3. That's a little risky, wide receiver 3, but if you do get him as a flex play, I think he will be pretty successful. Well, hopefully Brandin Cooks can step up and really take a chance to lead the Texans as a wide receiver 1. Moving on to number 34, that is going to be Terry McLaurin for the Washington Washingtons. He's a third-round pick out of last year's draft. He was teammates with starting quarterback Dwayne Haskins in college at Ohio State, and he does have a new head coach, Ron Rivera, as he is now in D.C. So Scary Terry, known around fantasy league circles, had quite a hot start to the season last year. He rolled off 3 straight games of catching 5 or more passes and hauled in a touchdown as well. And then he had a 2-touchdown performance in Week 6. So it was looking amazing for Terry McLaurin and all the owners who spent all their fab on him. However, after Week 6, it was a little bit more bumpy for the rookie wide receiver as he scored just 2 more times, though that was during fantasy playoffs. For the year, Terry had 58 catches for 919 yards and 7 touchdowns, and he would have had a real shot at 1,000 yards had he not missed Week 17 to a concussion. The biggest thing that jumps out from the stat line, though, is he had 93 targets, so Dwayne Haskins was certainly checking his way. The only problem is consistency. For Terry to have a more reliable season, he will need Haskins to improve. It helps that Washington is one of the worst teams in football and will have to keep throwing at the end of games, but you also need to connect with your wide receiver, obviously, to produce. Haskins is having to learn a new system all over again, but Ron Rivera is a top coach in the NFL, and she'd have no problem helping him out. Terry is going at pick 506 right now. That seems just a little early for me, as I think he is being drafted at his ceiling instead of his floor, as there is no doubt he will have great games, but will he be consistent enough to still help get you wins for fantasy? Moving on to player number 33, that is going to be A.J. Green, Cincinnati Bengals. He missed all of 2019 due to injury. He signed his franchise tag and will make $17.9 million this year. And he's had 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons since entering the league in 2011. So AJ has been one of the most consistent and big-time playmaking wide receivers since gracing his presence in the league. AJ Green and Andy Dalton clicked right away and helped the Bengals to the playoffs time and time again. Unfortunately, a foot injury suffered in 2018 lingered all off-season and forced him out of action the entire 2019 season. In the 9 games Green played in 2018, he put up 46 catches for 694 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he obviously still is one of the game's top wide receivers when everything is clicking. Marvin Lewis is gone. Andy Dalton is gone. But in is Zach Taylor at head coach and new shiny quarterback Joe Burrow. Also, since Green has been out of action, Tyler Boyd has stepped up and became the new number 1 for the team. So what will that mean for the 32-year-old AJ Green if he is finally fully healthy? Green's ADP is higher than I expected, as he is going at 604 right now. I thought he would be closer to around round 7 or round 8, but it is clear that fantasy players are still reminiscing on having him one more time. If Green is healthy and Burrow can have a decent enough rookie year, Green might just provide plenty of value coming in the 6th round. Moving on to player number 32, that is going to be Michael Gallup, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver. He was a 3rd-round pick in 2018. He had a quiet breakout last year, and the Cowboys paid Amari Cooper and drafted wide receiver CeeDee Lamb in the 1st round. So Gallup played in all 16 games his rookie year and had an okay rookie year, but his sophomore year he stepped up big time. In the 14 games he played, he had 66 catches for 1,107 yards and 6 touchdowns. He actually only had 7 less targets and only 82 less receiving yards than Amari Cooper, who the Cowboys paid $100 million to. Unfortunately, though, they also drafted CeeDee Lamb in the 1st round out of Oklahoma, which gives Dak another uber-talented target to throw to. There is a ton of chatter coming out of Cowboy land this year about how great this offense will be, and there's no denying that. But Dak can only throw one ball at a time, so how fruitful will those targets be that comes Gallup's way? Currently, he's being drafted at 708, and boy, that upside is mighty high right now. If you do want a piece of this Cowboys offense, and I know I personally do, you might want to pass up on Amari Cooper and take a chance on Gallup in the 6th or 7th round. Moving on to player 31, that is going to be Julian Edelman, New England Patriots. Julian had his best season last year at 33 years old. He's now 34. He has never played a season without Tom Brady at quarterback, and Cam Newton is for now the presumed quarterback for the Patriots. Edelman came into the league in 2009 as a 7th round pick out of Kent State. As a quarterback, though, He then made the transition to wide receiver, and though it took a while, he became the wide receiver we all know and love beginning in 2013. For years, Brady peppered Edelman with quick targets, and although the team had a down year last year, Edelman did not. He had 100 catches for 1,117 yards and 6 touchdowns. This was the most receiving yards he has had, and he also had 153 targets, which was the most as well. Now, with TB12 gone, there are question marks everywhere. Will Cam Newton stay healthy? If healthy, will Cam even be good? If no, then will Jarrett Stidham be good? Even with all this uncertainty, one thing remains, and it's that Edelman is great at what he does and should succeed no matter what. The consistency is really the big question mark. He's going at 701 right now. That seems fair. If Cam stays healthy, I would have no problem taking him with my 7th pick. But with no preseason games to watch, I may let someone else roll the dice on Edelman instead. Moving on to player number 30, that is going to be DK Metcalf, Seattle Seahawks. He had a solid rookie year. He set the rookie record for most receiving yards in a playoff game at 160. And he has all the physical tools to become the alpha for this offense. Metcalf wowed at the combine, running a 4.33 40 at 6'4", 230 pounds, while also having a 40.5-inch vertical and doing 27 reps at 225 pounds. This soared him up draft boards and had some analysts making him a first-round pick. He ended up being the last pick in the second round and proved doubters wrong for the most part. His first year as a Seahawk, he had 58 catches for 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he did have that great playoff game against the Eagles. He did underwhelm a bit in the next week versus the Packers, but all in all, it was a successful rookie season. He mainly played the sideline, and Seahawks offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer is wanting to move DK around more for this upcoming season, as he didn't want to overwhelm the rookie wideout. Another year with Russell Wilson at quarterback and Tyler Lockett out wide, DK has a great chance to build upon the success he had last year. The only problem? He's being taken at 410 right now in drafts, and this has backfire written all over it. Consistency was his biggest problem last year, and Russ likes to spread the ball around. I think he's being drafted at his ceiling right now, so I probably won't be having him on any of my teams unless I can get him in the 6th round or later. Moving on to player 29, that is going to be Marquise Hollywood Brown, Baltimore Ravens. He was the first wideout taken in last year's draft. He was the number 1 wide receiver for the Browns, but he only played more than 70% of snaps 4 times last year. It might be surprising to have a Ravens wide receiver ranked this high on their heavy run first offense, but that's what happens when you have the talent that Marquise Brown does. He was very boomer bust, but that is usually the case for young wideouts. For the year, he had 46 catches for 584 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he actually ended the year in the playoffs against the Titans on a positive note. He had 7 catches for 126 yards. As much running as Lamar Jackson and the Ravens do, he isn't too bad of a passer either. Lamar has said that he wants to have more deep passes and outbreaking pass routes in the offense, as he actually completed 51% of his deep throws, which is in line with Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz. Hollywood is a big play waiting to happen and can change a bad fantasy day into a great fantasy day in an instant. Just like with Metcalf, Hollywood will need to be more consistent and play more than 70% of snaps. Now, I absolutely trust that he will see growth this year, and I am loving his ADP way more than Metcalf's. Brown is going at 605, which is 2 rounds later than Metcalf. Metcalf might be the more physically gifted of the two, but Marquise has a better value right now. Moving on to player number 28, that is going to be Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati Bengals. He has been leaned on as the number 1 the past 2 seasons. He's got back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and he signed a 4-year, $43 million contract extension last offseason. Boyd was a second-round pick out of Pittsburgh in the 2016 NFL Draft and played sparingly his first 2 years in the league. Then, in 2018, he got a shot when Green went down, and he hasn't looked back. Last year, he had 90 catches for 1,046 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is actually quite impressive when you factor in that the Bengals scored the 3rd least points in the league. Now primed with Joe Burrow at quarterback and A.J. Green may be healthy, this could help Boyd to take the next step he needs and truly be not only counted on, but also respected by the fantasy and NFL community. Bengals did draft T. Higgins in the 2nd round, but I don't really see him taking away much from Boyd, and if anything, he should be A.J. Green's replacement. Boyd's current ADP is fantastic at 801, and I am absolutely all over this. I plan on having Boyd on all my fantasy teams this year and reaping the benefits that come with it. Moving on to player 27, that is going to be Jarvis Landry, Cleveland Browns. He had the most receiving yards in his career last year. He has played in all 16 games since 2014, and this is year 2 of the OBJ and Juice combo. Landry has been one of the most consistent PPR wide receivers since entering the league in 2014. That continued in his second year with the Browns as he put up 83 catches for 1,174 yards and 6 touchdowns. He actually had 5 more targets than Odell as well. Landry should once again have a terrific year, and if Baker Mayfield can be the quarterback the Browns drafted him to be, Landry has an outside shot of getting his first season with double-digit touchdowns. Landry is going at 707, which seems pretty late for a guy who has always been extremely successful. Still just 27 years old, he might not have the flash that Odell brings, but you'll be kicking yourself for completely ignoring him when it comes to draft day, as he should provide plenty of value for you. Moving on to player 26, that is going to be Devante Parker, Miami Dolphins. He had a shocking breakout in his 5th year in the league. Because of this, he signed a 4-year, $40 million contract extension right before Christmas. And the Dolphins drafted Tua Tagovailoa as the potential franchise quarterback in this year's draft. No one, and I mean no one, saw this breakout coming, and he actually didn't have his first good game until week 4 last year. He went 4 for 70 and 1. It looked as if Miami was going to give up on him, but boy, they both lucked out. Parker had 72 catches for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns, which were career highs all across the board. It definitely helped that he had gunslinger Ryan Fitzmagic at quarterback, but this was easily one of the most unpredicted breakouts of the year. It gets even better as now Parker's with the team on a new deal. Tua will be mentored by Fitzpatrick, which should help a ton, and the Dolphins brought in no extra wideouts for this upcoming season, so Parker will be the number 1 once again. Now, he will have to battle with tight end Mike Gesicki and sophomore wide receiver Preston Williams for targets, but they won't take away much, if any. He is going at 6'10 right now, and I'm actually a little surprised it isn't higher, as the fantasy community tends to overdraft players that had breakouts from the year before. I'm still just a little cautious of this true breakout, and I want to see Tua play with him first, but if he's still there in the middle of round 7 or round 8, you may want to jump on him and kick the tires. Moving on to player number 25 and the last player in this tier, it is going to be Marvin Jones, Detroit Lions. He has dealt with injuries the past 2 seasons. He's entering the final year of his current contract, and he should have a healthy Matthew Stafford back. Marvin Jones is once again being undervalued entering this upcoming season. This has pretty much been the case for the former 5th rounder since coming into the league in 2012. Although, like I said, he only played in 9 games in 2018 and then missed the final 3 games last year. For the season, he had 62 catches, 779 yards, and 9 touchdowns, as he has been more of a boomer bust wide receiver but has great catching ability in contested catches. Now back healthy, and with quarterback Matthew Stafford healthy too, the 30-year-old is primed to once again reward fantasy players who seek him out. Pair him next to Kenny Golladay. Marvin should have no problem beating any one-on-one coverage or out-jumping the defensive back if needed. His ADP is at 901 right now, and you could probably get him later than that. If you drafted a couple safe wide receivers in the early rounds, target Marvin Jones in this spot could really push you over the edge when it comes to your fantasy matchups. All right, we will now begin with our tier 2 wide receivers. So we will be looking at 24 through 13. Starting off at the beginning of this tier, we will have Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos. He had a tremendous sophomore campaign. Drew Lock is now primed with offensive talent everywhere, and the Broncos did draft wide receiver Jerry Jeudy in the first round this year. Sutton had a great rookie season going 42 for 704 and 4. Because of this, I targeted him in drafts last year for my fantasy team and was ecstatic that not only I was able to get him, but that it paid off. He had 72 catches for 1,112 yards and 6 touchdowns in his follow-up campaign, and I could once again see him topping all of those marks for this season. Although I am really hoping he does get to double-digit touchdowns, because if that does happen, he will absolutely crush his ADP. Right now, he is going at 512, which is pretty fair. That gives enough room for him to outpace that ADP just a bit, but without having to go all in on him. A couple things potentially holding him back this year is Drew Lock not really growing any in his sophomore campaign at quarterback. Also, there are a bunch of new mouths to feed on this Broncos offense, starting off with new coming running back Melvin Gordon, and of course rookie wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Now I think this will help eliminate double teams on Sutton, which should give him better chances to catch the balls thrown his way. He will definitely be on my mind when it comes to draft season. Moving on to player 23, that is going to be Keenan Allen, Los Angeles Chargers. He's had 3 top 12 fantasy seasons in a row. He could be a slight value this year, and quarterback combo of Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert this year for the Chargers. Keenan has been one of the better, and I'd say even more underrated wide receivers since entering the league in 2013. While he has never had double-digit touchdowns, he has been a reception and yards beast, as he averaged 101 catches, 1,250 yards, and 6 touchdowns the past 3 seasons, although that has been with Phillip Rivers at the helm. Now, Tyrod and Justin, how they will play, this is anyone guesses. And with the lack of preseason games and a true training camp, we might not see the first-round quarterback for a while. Tyrod has been a journeyman quarterback playing with the Ravens, Bills, and Browns, but this is easily the best team he has been on in his career. Keenan is going at 504 this year, and I would much prefer to see him in the 6th round as he does have elite talent. I just don't trust the quarterbacks enough to take him that early. He would be a great wide receiver 3 or flex spot than having to rely on him as a surefire starter on your team. Moving on to player 22, that is going to be A.J. Brown, Tennessee Titans. He was a 2nd round pick in last year's draft. He had a fantastic rookie season with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, and he averaged a ridiculous 20.2 yards per catch. Just like every Titan, once they switched to Tannehill, everything got better, and Brown was no exception. He became just the 5th rookie wide receiver since the merger to be drafted outside the top 50 and have 1,000 yards receiving. For the year, he had 52 catches for 1,051 yards and 8 touchdowns. Although this is a run-first team, AJ should easily eclipse the 84 targets he saw from Ryan last year. He is currently going at 408, and this is a pretty tough choice because we are hoping that Ryan Tannehill can continue the success he had last year. Although I am skeptical, I liked what I saw from Brown enough, and I will keep him on my radar for this year's draft. Moving on to player 21, that is going to be Stefon Diggs, Buffalo Bills. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He was traded from Minnesota to Buffalo before the NFL draft, and he will absolutely be the number 1 target for the Bills. So, Stefon Diggs has been a good receiver since entering the league in 2015 out of Maryland. He was shockingly traded this offseason to the Buffalo Bills. I had no idea he was even being shopped. He goes from one run-heavy offense to another, but the quarterback for the Bills is the true wild card here. Last year, with Thielen missing a bunch of games, Diggs had 63 catches for 1,130 yards and 6 touchdowns. Fantasy players were hoping for more as he finally got the opportunity to be the one, but he was more boomer bust week to week. Now playing with Josh Allen, he may be even more boomer bust, but I am willing to take my chances on him as I am a big Josh Allen believer. Diggs is going at pick 603, and I do really like this value for him as I can see him returning it no problem. I also would look at pairing Josh Allen with him, as I think that could be a deadly 1-2 punch from week to week as he could be a sneaky flex play. Moving on to player 20, that is going to be Tyler Lockett, Seattle Seahawks. He had his first 1,000-yard season last year. He signed a contract extension in 2018, so he's locked in until the 2022 campaign. And fellow wide receiver DK Metcalf seems to be a rising star. Stuck behind Doug Baldwin for the past few seasons, Lockett got the chance to be the number 1 for the Seahawks, and he delivered. He had 82 catches for 1,057 yards and 8 touchdowns. With the departure of Baldwin, Lockett saw 110 targets last season, and although Metcalf is an up-and-coming wide receiver, Lockett is solidified in his slot man role. Having great speed and elite quarterback in Russell Wilson, I fully expect Lockett to see 100 targets once again, and he can be relied upon in fantasy. It would be nice to see Russ not throw it to other players as much, as he is similar to Drew Brees in the fact that it doesn't matter who you are, Drew is going to target you no matter what. So this can cause Tyler to have a couple dud games, but I'll take the chance on him. He's going at pick 507 right now, and I could see him slipping in the 6th round, and if he does, you should gobble him up. With the rise of Metcalf, I could see this helping Lockett too and having more open looks head his way. Moving on to player number 19, that is going to be T.Y. Hill, Indianapolis Colts. They brought in Rivers to replace Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. He missed 6 games with an injury last year, and he will be a free agent after this season. It seems as though every year in fantasy football, either end up drafting him or trading for him on my team. Even with Andrew Luck at quarterback, it seemed as most people overlooked him and only saw him as a deep threat. But he has put up 5 1,000-yard seasons in the 8 he has played. Last year, in the 10 games, he had 45 catches for 501 yards and 5 touchdowns. And that was also with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Now he gets to play with Phillip Rivers, who finally has a good O-line to protect him, and it's hard not to get too excited over this. Now, Hilton did suffer a mild hamstring issue on August 2nd, but hopefully it won't flare up again throughout the season. As with speedy guys like Hilton, hamstring issues are common. He once again will be the number 1 wide receiver on the team, and I don't see anyone else really taking away from him. He is going at 5'6", and this is another wide receiver who has exceptional wide receiver 1 talent. He just has to stay healthy to get there. Moving on to number 18, that is going to be DJ Chark, Jacksonville Jaguars. DJ had a fantastic sophomore season. Gardner Minshew is back in the saddle, and he is probably the riskiest top wide receiver you're going to draft this year. Chark played sparingly his rookie season, but he shocked everyone last year as the tandem of Chark and Minshew was one of the best in the league. Last year, Chark had 73 catches for 1,008 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he looks like a true number 1 wide receiver. New offensive coordinator Jay Gruden says he wants to move Chark all over the field, which can only be taken as positive in my book. One big thing to be careful here, though, is Chark is probably the most volatile of any of these wide receivers I have ranked. For example, last year, for the first 11 weeks of 2019, he was the wide receiver 5 in fantasy. Then from weeks 12 on, he was the wide receiver 64 in fantasy points per games. Now, the Jags paid Foles big money, and once he did come back from his collarbone injury, they did put him in for a couple games, and then Minshew finished out the year. So it was a little wompy for the Jaguars during the middle of that. So maybe that can contribute to it some, but for Chark to enter into the wide receiver 1 tier, he will need Minshew mania back and better than ever, because if not, it will have its ups and downs once again. Chark is going at 503, and he actually may slip a bit in some of your drafts. If he does, I take the chance on him because his upside is huge. And who doesn't love hearing that song, Baby Chark, do 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 do. Moving on to player 17, that is going to be Odell Beckham, Cleveland Browns. Odell's had an elite 3-year run from 2014 to 2016. Injuries, though, have bothered him the past 3 seasons, and there is now another new coaching regime in Cleveland. It seems like ages ago, but just back in 2016, OBJ was coming off a 3rd year having at least 90 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He was truly on his way to being one of the best wide receivers to enter the league. Unfortunately, injuries have derailed him since. His first year with the Browns, he had 74 catches for 1,035 yards and 4 touchdowns. While he did play in all 16 games, he wasn't really healthy. He dealt with groin and hip pain the whole season, and he did end up having sports hernia surgery. He has posted multiple videos of himself working out and running with no issues, and says he is free of any pain, which is good because we do need his elite level play, not just for fantasy, but entertainment purposes in general. Because when he is on the field, he is absolutely a game changer. Now, his second year with the Browns, OBJ and company have said that they are going to be mentally sharper and more focused on the games at hand. Kevin Stefanski is now at the helm in Cleveland, and he will look to do what Freddie Kitchens couldn't, and that is to bring Cleveland a winning record in who knows how many years. Everyone wants playoffs in Cleveland, but first, let's try to just win some games and be relevant. OBJ is going at pick 309, and this will probably be the only time he will ever have discounted fantasy. Maybe some of your league mates won't want to deal with him, so if he does happen to fall to round 4, scoop him up and hope that OBJ is back to setting the world on fire. Moving on to player number 16, that is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster, Pittsburgh Steelers. Juju is entering his 4th year in the league at just 23 years old. Last year was his first year without Antonio Brown, and he struggled with Big Ben out. Juju also dealt with injuries last year as well. As a Texans fan, I really hope the Steelers don't extend Juju and he becomes a free agent because I would love to see him a part of the team. And with him being a second-round pick, he will be a free agent next offseason. Juju has elite talent. As the final year he played with AB, he had 111 catches, 1,400 yards, and 7 touchdowns. However, all that changed when Ben and himself went down with injuries. Juju played 12 games with Mason Rudolph and Doug Hodges and had 42 catches for 552 yards and 3 touchdowns. So we are still waiting to see what he can do as the guy in Pittsburgh. One thing to watch for this year is that Steelers have been talking up sophomore wideout Deontay Johnson and rookie wideout Chase Claypool. James Washington is still around, and he was used mainly as a deep threat, so that is to be aware as well. However, this will drive Juju into the slot. He should see more targets. A healthy Ben, though, should bring everyone full circle. Juju is going at 311 this year, and I know I will be taking my chances on him because I really don't see him not bouncing back and reminding us why the Steelers moved on from Antonio Brown. Moving on to player number 15, that is going to be Cooper Kupp, LA Rams. Cooper is entering his final year on his rookie deal. There are some questions over his role heading into the season, and he had his first 1,000-yard season last year. Since entering the league in 2017, Kupp has been one of Goff's favorite targets, especially in the red zone, as he is averaging a touchdown every 9.3 catches. The team began utilizing more 2 tight end formations, so this did cause Kupp to have a weird run of bad games from weeks 6 to 12, but he did end the final 5 weeks as a top 10 in wide receiver. For the year, he had 94 catches for 1,161 yards and 10 touchdowns. And the only reason I don't have him top 12 is because no one is quite sure what his snap percentage will be and if the Rams will keep running 2 tight end sets. But again, I do have him at 16, so he's just a couple players away. He is currently going at 404, which isn't too bad as the offense will probably end up throwing more with Todd Gurley now out of the picture. But if you do prefer a safer target, you may want his teammate instead. And that is going to be Robert Woods, number 14, and also LA Rams. Robert started the year slow, but he ended red hot. He only scored 2 touchdowns last season, though, and he is the more consistent of the LA Rams wide receivers. Woods played his first 4 seasons in the league with the Bills, and he was productive but never shined until he came over to the Rams. He signed a 5-year deal with them in 2017, and if he hadn't gotten injured actually in 2017 and missed 4 games, he probably would have had 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Last year, he had 90 catches for 1,134 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he should absolutely see more touchdowns next year. Just pretty unlucky in that end. From weeks 10 to 17, though, Woods averaged 11 targets per game, which should easily place him among some of the top wide receivers in the league. He is currently going at 407, and while Kupp probably has a higher ceiling than Woods, Woods is the safest of the pair. And he is just a few picks after Kupp anyways. It will really depend on team build on which wide receiver you prefer of these 2. And then moving on to our final wide receiver, that is going to be Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears, number 13. Allen is entering a contract year. He showed again last year that he can be a number 1, and there will be some combo of Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. Robinson began his career in the NFL as a wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and in 2015 he had 80 catches for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. This was the year Bortles shocked everyone, and then he went back to being Blake Bortles. Then in 2017, A-Rob tore his ACL, ending his career in Jacksonville. The Bears took a chance on him with a 3-year deal, and he has succeeded even with spotty quarterback play. Last year, he had 98 catches for 1,147 yards and 7 touchdowns, and he once again proved he can be leaned upon as the guy for the Bears. Now, you got to think Foles can beat out Mitch and maybe be a little bit more consistent for the Bears because really, I was mainly avoiding him because of Trubisky, but clearly he can get it done, just like Hopkins got it done with Osweiler. A-Rob is going at 311, and I think there's a good chance he falls to the middle of round 4 because I'm sure some players are just going to avoid the Bears offense at all costs. I try not to be one of those players, but there sure is a lot of risk here with Allen Robinson this year and that funky Chicago Bears quarterback situation. Well, that will do it, y'all, for the wide receiver rankings of 36 through 13. Remember, tune in Monday. Yes, we won't be having any more shows on Sunday. We will now move to Monday. Make sure you come in Monday as we will go over the top 12 wide receivers and the top 12 tight ends. And then come back that following Friday as we will have our first fantasy football mock draft. Make sure you smash that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you share. And let me know in the comments what you think. Are you excited for fantasy football? I absolutely know I am. This has been Wade with Tongue Sky Gaming Sports. Don't forget to put God above all. I'll see you next time.